Welcome, everybody. This is the latest episode of the AEG show. This is your host, Goose. And with me this week, I have Jeff.
Hello.
And I also have Travis from Shellback Tech Games.
Hey there.
How's it going, everybody?
Oh, it's gone.
I am here. I'm actually just excited about this whole thing.
Yeah, I'm actually really excited. Goose, the host, your host, the best host.
Yeah. keep talking.
I actually got a recommendation from Smashley B, our good friend over on Twitch, who said, "Hey, I got this guy. You've got to get him on your show. He's going to be perfect for your show. You need to book him." And I said, "Okay, let's see what he's about." And it just so happens that he does a great job in terms of helping veterans building their PCs. He builds PCs for veterans. This is what he does. It's a great thing, and we're going to talk all about it on our show. But first things first, we're going to talk about the Nintendo Switch, a new Nintendo Switch. Last week, we focused about 20 to 30 minutes on the Nintendo Switch Lite, and now we have a new hardware announcement from Nintendo. And just to recap, what they've talked about is, oh, wait a minute.
Oh,
I think we have another challenger.
Oh, hello.
Hey,
There he
Phil.
is.
Hey, Gustavo. Hey, Jeff.
hello.
Herculean
going?
effort. That was a Herculean effort to go through the entire US1 without killing myself in there. All right.
We're live,
Yeah,
by the
we're
way,
just-
Marlon.
Yeah, we're live. He's introing our first segment. So
Go
sit
ahead.
back and enjoy the show.
Welcome to the show, our Honduran heartthrob by way of Florida. You got to love him. He's a great guy.
Our Cuban Casanova.
So, Marlon, before you hopped in, not abruptly, but abruptly,
Yeah, you can say that again.
we were talking about Nintendo Switch and the new hardware. There's been a new revision to the base Nintendo Switch, and really what we gain is battery life. It's got a better battery life even than the Nintendo Switch Lite. And when I saw this and I heard about it, I said, this is a little weird. What is going on? A week before they announced the Nintendo Switch Lite, handheld only, better battery life than the original base Switch, and now just a week afterwards, they've announced a new revision to the existing Switch. And I wanted to kick it off to Marlon in particular, because I know he's a big fan of the Nintendo Switch. So is Jeff.
Yep.
But Marlon in particular, who bought a Switch not so long ago. How do you feel about this? These hardware announcements by Nintendo.
It's Nintendo. That is literally what it is. It is the definition of how Nintendo operates and how they work. They love creating. If you were to say what type of personality Nintendo would have, it would be Jeff. Makes
What is
all
that?
the consoles
Ouch.
for everybody. Just anything we can put our hands on. You want a Pikachu console? Here you go. You want a Monster Hunter World console? Here you go. You want a crappy console that has crappy battery life? Here you go. It's
And then we'll make you buy another one in another year, 2 years.
It reminds me of the whole PS3 era. Remember when we were getting like PS3s left and right, like the PS3 Slim, and then the PS3 Slimmer edition, and then we have
Yeah,
like
the
the
super
bullshit.
slim.
Yeah.
and then we get like the blue one, the red one, the green. I'm like, excuse me, but
I mean, they still kind of do that.
but it's annoying because Nintendo, I feel like, is focusing more on just making themselves, be more of like, look what we're doing with our consoles as opposed to look what we're doing with our video games. And it's Nintendo for you. Like, there's nothing that I can say because it just pisses me off even more now that I think about it. Because I thought we were getting a Pro, we got a better life battery when it, like, I don't know, pissing off.
My biggest problem with it is that there is nothing different except a better battery.
I think just the nerd in me, just knowing a little bit of how the manufacturing process works, I think they're just making the chips smaller. I think it's moving to a 12 or 7 nanometer process, the CPU of the Switch. So I think they're trying to make more money with the same exact price point at $299. and giving the consumers a better Switch in terms of hardware. The battery's going to last longer, and I'm glad that Marlon spoke about the PS3, and how many times Sony changed it, but Sony could not bring down the manufacturing costs of the PS3 fast enough. I mean, I don't think they ever made money on that console throughout like 8 years or however long it was on the market before the new consoles came out in PS4 and Xbox One. But I think that's what it is. I think Switch Lite was specifically for a certain demographic. I'm going to say the kids, the younger crowd. And this new Switch is just because this is going to replace this new Switch that's coming out will be the only base Switch being sold going forward. And I just think it's Nintendo trying to see how they can basically, get an extra margin here or there on the hardware that they're selling.
It wasn't just that. From my understanding, they really had to address the chief complaint that a lot of people saw with the original model, and that was that if they were taking it out on trips or long hauls or going on an airplane ride, that by the time they were done with their flight, their Switch was dead. And so they really had to address those flaws in the overall system, and this is their answer to it without giving them just Switch Lite, which limits them to handheld only.
Yeah, I'm glad that you point that out. You make a good point. It's funny that you mentioned that because I remember when the Switch first came out, there was like little controversy over extended usage if you played it docked, and there was a lot of Switch models which were being warped. It was called warping due to the heat, so it lost its like structural. What's the word I'm looking for? It basically
integrity.
Yeah, that's a great word. It lost its structural integrity, and I wonder if they fixed that also with this new Switch. Not discounting the battery, but I do agree with you because I remember I would take my Switch for work, although rarely, but I always knew I need a battery pack with me because it won't last the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
What about you? What about you, Jeff? Are you going to be buying this Switch? I know that you bought one recently, but you probably saw it and get this one.
No, I'm not. I mean, as much as I would like a bigger battery life, I very rarely take my Switch anywhere other than in my house. And like yesterday, I was playing Captain Toad or whatever, and I got to the point where there's like 5% left in the battery, and I just docked it and then just kept playing that way and waited till the battery charged up a little bit and then took it off the dock and started playing handheld again. So I mean, it's not going to be a make or break thing to have a little bit longer battery life. And I mean, maybe if they were doing a special edition version of the console, like a Link's Awakening version or something like that, maybe I would consider doing it, but probably not.
I think honestly,
go ahead. Sorry, Mom.
Talking about the manufacturer of the PS3 that you mentioned, I was looking at some news. They stopped making productions of the PlayStation 3 on around, I want to say, 2017.
Sony didn't make them anymore, you mean?
Yeah, that's when they stopped. They stopped making productions of the PS3 on like around 2017. That's, I don't know how much money they were hemorrhaging on that, man. And I'm thinking about it. I mean, the Nintendo Switch, it's always been marketed as a family-friendly console. It's mainly used for kids that want to enjoy their Marios and stuff like that. It's mainly used for adults that like those Nintendo first-party systems. But they always do this. They always did it with the 3DS. They came out with first it was the 3DS. Then it was the 2DS XL. Then it was the new Nintendo 3DS XL. Then literally like a month later, they came out with a 2DS. And it's like, come on, give me a break. Well, yeah. It's like, oh, this is for the kids, but this is actually for the kids, and this is for the babies. And I'm like, okay. So what's the whole point? What was the whole point reason to create the Nintendo Switch if you wanted to create a console that was mainly used for competing with the PS4 and Xbox One X? And then you're going to go, you know what? We realized that these people are actually using it more as a handheld mode, so we're going to kind of discontinue the 3DS, but we'll give you a Nintendo Switch Lite. And I'm going, again, Nintendo doing Nintendo things.
Well, they've done it since the Game Boy Color days, though. If you look at it, because that was when we had like the Advance, then the Advance SP, and then I mean you continue on and on. They
We got the
done
micro
this
for
from the
crying out
beginning.
loud. We got the Nintendo Advance Micro for crying out loud.
Yes, exactly. I mean, all of these systems, they have been designed to nickel and dime the consumer. They really are.
And it works. You know, I'm pretty sure that they're going to be, you know, I'm making up numbers. I'm pulling it out of my behind, but I am pretty sure that more than 500,000 people, and again, I'm just pulling it out of my behind. I have no way to verify this, but I'm willing to bet a thumb that 500,000 people who have already purchased a Switch are going to buy this new revision or a Nintendo Switch Lite in addition to what they have already.
They will.
There
is no.
If you're one of those people that lives in bigger cities and commutes every morning and takes your Switch every single morning with you, yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer to get a version of it that's going to have a bigger battery life. I mean, they make like battery packs you can buy for your existing Switch and stuff like that extend the life and stuff like that. But I guarantee you people would rather I just want that internally, so I'm just going to buy this. I'm just going to, sell my Switch and buy the next version.
The only thing that struck me as odd, and it's just nitpicking, but I don't get why the new base Switch has a longer. I mean, I get it in terms of why, from a mechanical or technical point of view, the Switch Lite has a smaller form factor, thus a smaller screen and probably a smaller battery to power it. But for the life of me, I don't get why someone who is seeking to play a Nintendo Switch in handheld only mode, right, where battery would be more advantageous to them, would get a Nintendo Switch Lite. When you can just buy a regular base new Nintendo Switch and just play it all the time in handheld mode, and you can just forego getting the Switch Lite. That was a little confusing to me. But again, coming at it from a nerdy angle, I'm like, most people are probably going to think about that. They're going to be like, oh, Switch Lite looks cool, handheld only, I'll get that.
And they're going to see that $100 price difference.
But you also have to think about how you played it. Are you talking about it? Because you're looking at it from the perspective of a single guy only. You're not looking at it from the perspective of somebody who has a family, who has kids who are about the same in the age of 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, who want to use your console all the time and want to play these things. So this is like a thing that will help them immensely. Hey, listen, you can have this instead of using my console and you can just have fun with it. Or, hey, my kids are always using the console in TV mode. I can use this to play my video games on the go and then I don't have to worry about it. I can see that happening. I just, from the perspective of the, single guy on his apartment just enjoying video games, I don't see it like for Nintendo Switch Lite, unless you Shell said, you have a long commute that you have to do all the time. You have long flight times that you want to have something that you can use on the go and it's going to be reliable to keep you through the entire flight. Again, that's just not for me. I'm sorry, thank you Nintendo, but I'll stick to my Nintendo Switch and leave it like that. Because, I mean, thinking about it, if you remember the old Game Boy, all the peripherals that thing had?
Oh, man.
Do you remember what the amount of crap that Nintendo used to do when it comes to their consoles? Like, here's the battery pack, here's the light pack, here is the bigger screen pack, here
the Rumble
is
pack.
It's the Rumble pack. The Rumble pack didn't do nothing, okay? They didn't do Nintendo 64, the whole expansion pack, didn't do shit. It wasn't an expansion pack to help you run the game better. It was just there because they realized that the way that the game was made was incompatible with the way that Nintendo created Nintendo 64. The Rumble pack is just there to keep the game running effectively.
Yep.
Oh, one of the things that I do worry about it, and I've said it before to the listeners, but I'll say it again, is many of the listeners know that I haven't owned a proper Nintendo home console since ever, right? Since ever. This is my first proper Nintendo home console. Yes, it can switch and you can play it handheld mode, but it is their home console for intents and purposes. And one of the things that I know that happens to a lot of Nintendo fans is the fact that games that you bought for System X don't necessarily work for System Y, or there are some compatibility issues. And that's something that I, as somebody who bought a Nintendo Switch day one as an early adopter, that's something that I worry about. I'm like, hey, will my games work on this console going forward throughout the entirety of the console lifespan, or will I have to upgrade, like for example, like Xbox One X or PS4 Pro, in order to get the best visuals on this particular ecosystem? And that's something that I worry about. Now, I know I'm jumping the shark, right? Because we don't know if that's going to happen. It probably is no Nintendo based on their precedent. But man, I don't know about you guys, but that's worrisome to me.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess that's not worrisome to anybody else.
No, I mean it's a legitimate fear. I mean, and that's the unfortunate thing you run nowadays with home consoles is they're always going to come out with a better version as the life cycle, continues on. Yeah, I think you made it in the Discord, Goose, a good point. Like if they did the Switch Lite, which everybody was kind of assuming that was going to come to fruition. They made this now with this bigger battery life, and then they'll probably eventually do a Switch with a higher grade processor and a beefier system, probably alongside the launch of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Scarlet. I think you made that point.
Pro, if you will.
A Switch Pro, if you will. Thank you. Or the new Nintendo Switch, whatever the hell they...
God.
I know, Marlon, I know. But that's the risk, unfortunately, you run. I mean, you and myself, Goose, upgraded to the Xbox One X and the PlayStation 4 Pro because we wanted that, that next level of our gaming system. So, I mean, it's just something that I think console owners kind of have in the back of their mind. Like, this may be something that may not last me the entire life cycle, but I'll try to make it last as long as I can. So.
I don't think it's any different from, well, it is different because you're buying a whole console, but I don't think it's any different philosophically from, upgrading your CPU or GPU as a PC gamer.
Yes.
What do you have to say about that, Travis?
Yes.
You're a resident PC guy today.
Well, in all honesty, everything that's gone on in the market with these things, it makes me want to flock to my PC even more, to say the least.
That's a good way of putting it. Let's put it that way. But
it's kind of funny
because I mean, when you think about it, if I want to take a PC out, I have a laptop. It connects to my own account. It's the same account that I use on my home desktop. Boom, I'm taken care of. If I want my ultra powerful gaming machine, I can always upgrade every single part that's sitting inside of it. And if I don't like the way it's performing, well, let's swap that out for something else. Whereas you get all these iterations of these consoles, these PS4 Pros, the Xbox One X, the Xbox One S, the Switch Lite. You get all these iterations, and they're literally designed to make you buy an entirely new ecosystem every single time you want one. Well, I don't have to do that with my computer.
I would say that Xbox or Microsoft, and sorry listeners, we're going on a tangent, but we're a conversational podcast, so this is what we do. But I would say that you're absolutely correct, Travis. But I would say that Microsoft, especially with this generation, they look like they're positioning themselves and making great strides in making sure that your library doesn't end when a particular generation of a console ends. With their efforts in backwards compatibility with Xbox 360 games to Xbox One games and even OG Xbox games. And I am assuming that all of that effort and research and investment that has been done in that backwards compatibility program will migrate to their next gen box, whatever that may be. Especially with these CPUs that they have, these x86 architectures, I think it'll be easier for both Microsoft, who I think is leading the way in the console space, and PlayStation to allow gamers to continue playing their games. I mean, we've seen it with Xbox One X. I was so surprised where you can get Xbox 360 and even OG Xbox games running at 4K. I mean, that's something that you would only see in the PC space. And for $500 to get a box that does 4K at almost 30 frames per second.
Here's the thing.
I think that's a pretty good deal.
I think you said it best, Gustavo, and that was what for me was the appeal of a console, was the fact that you could get a box that could effectively run video games in native resolution for those consoles, whether it was 1080p, 720p, 920p. At those points, at that price, at an affordable price point, that you didn't have to worry about, GPU, CPU, RAM, or anything like that. You would just have to plug it in and have fun. When you start creating consoles that are being upgraded incrementally, little by little, every 2-3 years, and a gamer has to feel like he needs to upgrade every single time that they do come out with a new, better version of that console, then you're getting into the PC realm of just basically upgrading every 2-3 years. And I feel like it's not only in the console gaming situation, but also feels like it's also just in tech in general, whether it's your iPhone, whether it's your laptop, stuff like that. A new one comes out every 2-3 years. And we always have to be being coerced and being forced to upgrade every single time. Now, my issue with PC gaming isn't necessarily with PC gaming. It's just CPU or anything like that. You can upgrade. My problem is just how something as irrelevant as Bitcoin would basically jack up the prices of GPUs like that, because everybody wants to go just mine Bitcoin now. Before, you could find an affordable GPU or a graphics card for a decent $300, $400. Now, those same graphics cards that used to cost you $300, now they're like $700, $800, $900. So that jacks up the price of what a console can create if they are using the same architecture and just infrastructure when it comes to their stuff. So if Sony, Microsoft, or Nintendo can create a console that is for the consumer at an affordable price with a decent graphics card that will last you between 4 to 5 years, I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. But you can't be changing your graphics card and just CPU and memory every other 2 years and then expect me to buy a new one, especially when I'm dealing with another whole different, just infrastructure inside of the ecosystem. Those games that are on the PS4, they don't really work for the PS5. Oh, those games that are on Nintendo New Switch don't really work on the new Nintendo. So that for me is just aggravates it for me. And as a gamer, it just leaves me with a bad taste in my mouth. I gotta tell you.
Actually, now going off what he was saying, I was one of the unfortunate individuals that when I was building my own personal rig, before I got into what we're about to discuss here shortly, when I was building my own personal rig, I got hit with that graphics card shortage, and I paid what I would have normally paid for an entire rig just for my graphics card. Whoa. Now, keep in mind, now the reason that those are no longer the case is because of ASICs. When ASICs came out, mining on graphics card became irrelevant because you can't profit from it. But we also roll into the issues at hand with AMD. AMD just shook up the market again. Yep. They shook it up for NVIDIA, they shook it up for Intel, and they rammed them with all of these ultra low prices and ultra high performance ratios. And so this is actually good for the consumers. This will further lower our prices that we're paying for components to get it to where PC gaming is better for the consumer than, say, the console space, because they can afford to use their X370 board and buy a brand new 3000 series Ryzen, and it'll still work.
Yep. And that helps them a ton. I mean, it's when I saw the announcement for AMD, you know what was the first thing that I did? Travis?
No, Travis does not know it was the first thing you did.
I bought stock for AMD, okay? I was one of those motherfuckers who said, I'm buying stock from these guys, and I'm going to ride this puppy all the way to the bank. That's literally what I did. And it's been giving me some really good, pay interest back. Play that.
So Travis, as us folks over at AEG, we really wanted our founder Dalton with us but he wasn't able to make it. He's been working real hard. He is our resident PC guy. He's got a pretty beefy PC himself.
Now he is, yeah.
And he's a little smug about it too. He's a little bit of a jerk.
Hey,
but
I mean, yeah, okay.
yeah, exactly. But how big is, because I've been reading a bit about it in terms of AMD becoming this new big player. They've always been known for being second best, and PC enthusiasts have always been wary of their performance. But now with AMD coming in and basically shaking up the market in terms of high power, good delivering PC parts and GPUs and CPUs with I think it's Ryzen and Navi. Am I incorrect?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's correct.
With Ryzen and Navi at these price points, like what can NVIDIA do to compete in terms of pricing, and will PC fans still be wary of that, AMD always having that stigma of being second tier?
Well, and that's just it. The whole goal of AMD, and they admitted it from the start. They admitted it. Their entire goal for these two releases were to cause NVIDIA and Intel to answer by slashing their prices. They were literally trolling the other two companies.
Feels like Epic with
Steam.
Steam.
It really was. Now, even better, you look at these performance ratios for their CPU releases. They blew Intel out of the water by tenfold. They really did. They slammed them into the ground. They were competing with their top tier and at a fraction of the cost. That they did extremely well. These new Navi graphics cards that they released, they are excellent graphics cards for what they do. The kicker for everything is the fact that they are designed to do all of the middle tier gaming, your 1440 and below, for the best possible price point imaginable. You're paying $400 for their top end graphics card that just came out versus the $1,200 that you're going to pay for an RTX series card.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so wait a minute. Just me being, again, ignorant when it comes to this. Based on what you said, they aren't targeting NVIDIA and Intel at the high end. They're just trying to hollow out the middle, basically, by saying you can't compete with us in this realm. Is that it?
Yes and no, because they hit Intel at their high end.
Okay.
They did. They hit Intel at their high end and slammed them into the ground. NVIDIA, they didn't want to hit at the high end because they are saving those releases for later this year when NVIDIA already freaked out and put out their Super Edition cards. Mm-hmm. And when they put out these Super Edition cards, all they were just a step down from the version above that.
Yep.
And then they labeled them as Super and lowered the prices. They trolled them into doing it.
So was it like a reactionary move by NVIDIA because this was done after AMD? And
Extremely.
And for the listeners out there, for example, for our audience who may or may not know, to be honest, what are the gulf in prices that we're talking about here?
Oh, this is insane. You're talking about, okay, so they're 2080, the RTX 2080 compared to the RTX 2070 Super, which is essentially a 2080. They are charging the price of a 2070 card because of their answer for AMD doing as big a drop as they were. So you're looking at what originally cost $800 is now costing $450 to $500.
Wow, that's a big gulf. That's the savings of $300 to $350, even $400.
And here's the thing, like we're talking about Intel and NVIDIA, where it's the problem that NVIDIA and Intel had. They were happy charging this and just keep literally upgrade, because we know for a fact, and the industry when it comes to PC gaming know for a fact that NVIDIA and Intel could have done some of these cards at a much more lower price point. But they realized, hey, listen, we don't have competitors. We can charge whatever we want. So in what AMD was this, like, hey, listen, you guys keep doing this. You guys keep fucking up the entire market and the consumers with just this crappy ass graphics card that are just literally a re-release of their top tier brands, but just spec down just a little bit more, just to go, oh well, it's not as top. Well, it's a new car. It's like I remember when they did the entire titanium line for the RTX. I'm like, oh, I was so mad with that because it's just like, oh, the 1080, the 1060, but it's technically it's a 1050, but you don't have to worry about that. Nobody cares about that shit. So the thing that pisses me off about Intel and Nvidia is that they always keep doing this. They always just make it seem like it's a big step up when it's not really. So what AMD did is like, you know what? You guys are really fucking everybody up. We'll do this not because we know we're gonna lose a little bit of money here at the beginning of just these announcements, but we're gonna make sure that you guys get fucked up really bad.
Now, Travis, there's two questions that I want to ask because I'm not gonna lie, I'm nerding out right now. I want to pick this guy's brain mode. So I've got two questions for you in terms of these new CPUs and GPUs from AMD.
Go ahead.
The first one being this. We know that both Microsoft and Sony are working in tandem with AMD, and we suspect that they'll be providing their next CPU and GPU systems on a chip for these next generation boxes. What can we as console gamers expect in terms of maybe not performance, but yes. What can we expect in terms of performance? And can these new AMD CPU and GPU parts, can they influence the architecture of what we may get as console gamers going forward in the future?
Absolutely. The reason that this is such a big shakeup in the industry is because these new Xbox processors and the new PlayStation processors that they're going with, they're a completely different architecture from what the scene has had prior to. So it means they are able to pack more throughput in these systems to give you that, 4K 120 FPS gameplay. Whereas prior to that was an upconvert in your TV.
Yes.
This is true 4K 120 hertz gaming on a console level. What that means is that you're going to see gamers on the consoles start using their keyboard and mouse again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, these are things.
Yeah, you're going to start seeing these change ups to where they are able to backwards compatibility across the board. You're going to get access to all of the really old architecture and mold it to the new processors.
Now, these are frame rates that we've never seen hit on console before. Some of our HD TVs, some of our 4K TVs don't even support 120 hertz gameplay, or a few many monitors do. Certainly, my TV doesn't. I looked it up. The first thing I did, I was like, well, it doesn't have the HDMI 2.1 spec. It won't be able to hit 120 hertz. The panel doesn't do it, so I'll have to get a new TV in order to enjoy that. But I don't want to make this about console versus PC because we know PC will always win. The answer is always PC. We know this. You're laughing, I know, but it's the truth. But
yes, it really is. But in terms of
cost, yes, I want to make this point very importantly because, and I really wish Dalton was here because me and Dalton have had this little friendly debate about about the next consoles coming online, and I'm telling him, because he's a big PC guy now, and I tell him, hey Dalton, if I can pay $500, even $600 for a box that does true 4K 120 frames per second, I may not be able to play everything at maximum settings, but that's okay. For $600, I'll take it.
Oh yeah, and that's the truth for so many people out there. But you are always going to have that ability to build a $600 rig that will still play better than that.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, this is true. I know that when the Xbox One X came out, I don't know if you're familiar. You probably are. I don't mean to be insulting, but I know that I think it's PC Gamer on YouTube. Man, I feel bad because I don't remember their names. I think I remember Amanda Yee, but they tried to build a $500 rig that could do 4K at a stable 30. And for $500 back then, again, prices were probably high back then. Back then, they weren't able to do it. I'm sure that that's changed now.
Oh, big time, especially with the new Ryzen lineup.
Now, I said I had two questions. The second one is a little more PC centric. Again, for the listeners out there, for folks watching on the live stream, I apologize. I'm very ignorant when it comes to PC. I try to do my best. But when we have consoles on Xbox and PlayStation, developers usually seldom do they develop for both machines to specification. They'll use one lead machine, usually the one that's selling the best last generation it was Xbox 360. This year it's been PS4, and then they'll port the game over. Is this something that happens with PC in terms of game developers focusing on particular hardware? I know that there's lots of scale that they have to take account for, obviously, but
yes.
Are AMD cards, what they target are NVIDIA cards, what they target, APIs like Vulkan. I've read about that. Why don't game developers focus on, using the Vulkan API instead of whatever NVIDIA has? Like, these are things that I'm ignorant. Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Okay, well, when you focus on those, especially things like having a game developer build to a certain spec, AMD and NVIDIA and Intel are now giving access to these game developers. They're giving access to processors before they hit the market. They're giving them access to these programs and availability so that they can build up these games to essentially future-proof them for release to the public. And with cross-platform now, they are focusing on building through PC. They're focusing on building through PC now because AMD is providing them that platform cross-compatibility with their APUs being put inside the new Sony and Xbox machines.
Is this okay? This sounds, just in terms of developers being efficient and using their resources wisely and to the best of their ability. Can this or does this present a problem for NVIDIA?
Yes and no. It's basically forcing NVIDIA's hand to adopt other things with their hardware and software that they necessarily wouldn't like. We saw this earlier this year with their adopting of FreeSync on NVIDIA cards. FreeSync is the AMD
equivalent of G-Sync.
Equivalent. However, they don't charge for it. It's free market. It's free market.
Open source, you mean?
It's open source software that any developer can use for FreeSync. So by making something like that open source, NVIDIA didn't want that. They wanted their proprietary.
NVIDIA sounds like a Sony to me.
They
Trust
really
me, you'd be surprised.
They really are. And so when they forced NVIDIA's hand, NVIDIA was like, fine, all right, we'll make it available on our cards, but we won't make sure it works on all of them.
Oh, yeah. Is that legal?
Oh, it definitely is, because it's still open source.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is, I'll be honest with you, Travis, this is an entire new world to me in terms of PC. But you know what? With that, we're going to go to our next segment, our most awaited segment. We've had Travis speaking here for the past 45 minutes. We haven't even introduced him properly. We haven't given him his due. We haven't given him his time, but now the time has come. The time has come, and our guest, Travis from Shellback Tech. Travis, kick it off. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself, buddy.
All right. Well, my name is Travis. I am a disabled veteran. I served 6 years in the U.S. Navy. However, I was kind of an oddball. I was an oddball because I spent almost 3.5 years on a ship in Japan. And then when my time was up in Japan, they said, well, we don't have anywhere for you to go. I said, oh, well, you can stay on the ship for another 3 years, or or you can go and be on loan to the Army.
And what did you decide to do?
Well, I went on loan to the Army, and I went boots on ground with 306 MP in Camp Bucca, Iraq, and it's the largest. It was the largest theater internment facility in Iraq, and we housed the worst of the worst, and the Navy was in charge of the Supermax portion. So I was with NPDB 6 and 306 MP, and they retrained me as an MP, but they also trained me as a driver and a weapons specialist, and you name it, like it went across the board. They wanted to make sure I was ready for anything. Well, I ended up spending almost a year over there, and I messed up my knees really bad. I messed up my knees and my back. I got injured, and they sent me home. Well, at the end of that year, when I got home, they said, well, we still don't have anywhere for you to go. So I know we told you could pick, but this is what we have. And so they sent me to Fargo, North Dakota. Yes, Fargo, North Dakota at the Reserve Center. And I was the only active duty guy there.
Gotcha.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
Yeah, I'm kind of an oddball. I got out. I fought for 7 years to get my disability.
Wow.
7 years.
Wow.
I fought with the VA.
That is
and
unacceptable.
I finally got somebody to hear my story, and they listened to me. Well, they gave me individual unemployability, which basically it was me showing them that over the course of 7 years, I was unable to maintain a job for any length of time because of my disabilities. And I wasn't going to let those things hold me back. And it took me a long time to figure myself out and what I wanted to do with my life. But it took me being hospitalized to get actually figured out. I got hospitalized. I got divorced. I was almost homeless with 2 kids. And I ended up meeting my now wife, Brittany. And this woman took us in. After a month of knowing me, she took me and my 2 kids in and has not left my side since. She has built me up into the man that I am right now and has supported me into everything that I do. And about a year ago, I thought, well, let's try streaming. That sounds like a good idea. It really didn't fit. Well, after about 6 months of it not fitting, I was an affiliate, but I wasn't actually gaining any audience. I said, all right, let's try YouTube. YouTube ought to be fun. I know tech. I can do tech reviews. That'll be a good deal for me, right? Well, no. I don't like scripts.
Makes sense.
We hear that, buddy.
Yeah.
The AEG show is completely unscripted.
For the listeners out there, our founder, Dalton, Big Dick Daddy Dalton, has finally joined us. And he joined us a couple minutes ago with a beautiful, lovely burp. I loved it.
Yeah, that was amazing. I appreciate you being here, sir.
What's up, man?
Not a whole lot. Well, I guess to continue on, my after YouTube really didn't pan out, I thought, you know what? I'm done with this game. I had a friend reach out to me, and this was somebody I served with in Iraq. Her name was Paula, and she said she really needed help. She wanted to figure out exactly what it would take to start streaming. And so I had made quite a few contacts at that time in the gaming industry. So I said, well, why don't I just see what I can do and surprise the shit out of her? Pardon my French, but I mean, she had no idea what was going on. She had no inkling of anything. And I ended up putting together a custom PC for her that I'm getting ready to upgrade as we speak, because when I sent it to her, it was fairly decent, but she's learned its limitations. And, well, I built this custom PC for her, and I sent it to her, and I got a taste for it. And this was January, February timeframe of this year.
Whoa.
Yes, January, February timeframe of this year, and then I did another one. This time for cancer survivor. He was turning 14, and I had known his mother since high school. So going on 20 years that I had known this woman, and he had been battling ALL for 5 years,
Wow.
and just this spring got a clean bill of health.
Thank God.
Yes. So I built him a Fortnite computer because the kid's a Fortnite fan.
Of course he is.
Of course, of course, of course.
And I gave it a theme and well, I mean, he's turning 14. How is he not a Fortnite player?
Right.
Exactly. Well, and then I did another one and another one and another one. And now I am booked through next year. I decided it was time to make a charity of it. I want to create a charity organization to where I do this full time. I am still contributing to society by helping my brothers and sisters, these disabled veterans that feel like they don't have their outlet. And so that's how Shellback Tech was born. And I came up with a hashtag that has kind of made it wildfire at this point, and it's called #DisabledVeteranBuild. And it's custom PCs for disabled veterans free of charge.
That Travis, is a beautiful, amazing story, and I'm pretty sure people hear it and they tell you that, right? Because it's the nice thing to say, but we over here at AEG, we can genuinely tell you that is the beautiful story.
Yeah,
thank you so much for sharing it. And I'm going to say it right now. I love the fact, I hear lots of podcasts. I hear lots of folks, they go through tough things and they want to make it a pity party. And you didn't make it about yourself. You quickly just turned it around and said, what can I, in my position, what can I do for others?
Yeah.
And that's just a great thing. But now that you've told your story, I've got so many questions. Like, how do you source your parts? How do you, what custom PCs do you build? When you decide to build a PC, what's the game plan? Who is it for? Because based on what you said, and I don't think it's something that you were seeking. It's something that you just fell into. You said it yourself. I built the first one, and the bug bit me.
Quite literally. I guess to go with your first question, part sourcing. Through all of it, I started crowdsourcing, essentially. I would contact friends in the industry, just gaming friends in general, people that I had met in Discords, people that I had met online through Twitter or Facebook or what have you, and say, hey, look, I'm building this computer for this reason. This is not for me. This is a surprise for them. I'm trying to get this, and this. Is there anybody out there that is willing to donate to this cause? And I would literally go piece by piece until I had a full PC and slap it together. But I wasn't slapping it together like you would see in a factory. I take my time. I gather custom cables. I gather custom RGB fans. I make sure it's got custom decals. I am going through and making sure that each individual part that comes into that build is going to perform for the individual that it's for and the use case that they have. So now that has actually morphed to where I have had AMD send me 13 processors. I have had AMD send me engineering sample GPUs. I have had HyperX and Kingston send me RAM. I have had SSDs donated. I am now officially sponsored by Thermaltake. I have companies that are actually lining up to help this and push it along. And like InWin was one of my first sponsors, and they sent me for my own personal build on top of everything else. Oh, Dalton, thank you. I just saw that message. But InWin actually sent me a case on top of the 13 cases they donated for the disabled veteran builds. So they didn't just send me any case. They sent me their $1,200 D-frame 2.0 tubular case.
Wow.
That's like,
I'll be hon-
that's the top of the line cases that they
I'm a-
have, you know.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's their signature series.
I think it's
I'm going to be honest, Travis. My ignorance knows no bounds. But based on the way you said it, I said that's got to be top of the line stuff. That's the one that I want.
Well, it's
Yeah, like I don't know
it's-
either, but yeah, that sounds like it's
Well, picture tempered glass, open frame, bent tubes all the way around, and
beautiful.
it's designed to look like a motorcycle frame.
what?
Yes.
It's again, your story is amazing. And I think even more so, it's just you literally just got started this year.
Yes.
You said, hey, I started around January, February timeframe, right? It's the middle of the year. Today is July 22nd, and you're booked through next year.
Yes.
Are there any ones in particular? I mean, I'm pretty sure that they're all a labor of love. They're all fun to
Extremely.
build. Like us, you're a gamer, and even more so in terms of you're a PC gamer, so you get to tinker around, and you get to, I'm going to say, you get to play with the engineer in your heart, right? But are
Extremely.
there any particular builds that you have done thus far, or that are in the near or far future that you're really looking forward to? Can you talk parts or CPUs, GPUs that you're just can't wait to snap on to one of these motherboards?
Well, guys, I will tell you that I have some CPUs that I have in my possession right now that I am itching to use, and I can't wait. I am so excited. But I can't say whose build it's going in because they are watching live right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
We can help you.
But to give you an idea, I have two Threadripper CPUs in my possession. They are a 2950X, which is a fairly high dollar CPU. But then I had an executive at AMD send me a 2990WX, which is a $1,700 CPU.
Holy shit.
Wow.
This is a 32 core CPU, and it's going in one of these builds.
I'll be honest, I don't know much about PC, but this sounds like overkill, and I think this is something like probably like a photographer or like a grade A movie producer or editor would need to use.
Yes, the 2950X is actually going for a content creator. And then the 2990WX is actually going towards a programmer.
Wow. And then the next question is, and for you guys, both Marlon and Jeff, please ask if you guys have any questions. 'Cause I know I'm hogging up all the spotlight here.
No. You're good. I'm very ignorant when it comes to PC gaming and all these specs.
I'm geeking out.
But
Good.
Travis, how do you choose, who's a lucky winner, who gets, how do people reach out to you, or how do you build? Not how do you build the PCs, but how do you decide who gets a PC built by Travis?
Well, it's actually been quite a lengthy process. Each one has been brought to my attention by somebody else. If somebody comes to me and they start asking for a free computer, it's an immediate shutdown for me personally, because they're asking for that handout. I am looking for the selfless individual that is in need, that isn't expecting a handout, that isn't expecting something to just land in their lap. And you know what? Every single one of the veterans that I have on this list right now, because I have 7 to finish for the year, and then I am already into next year. I have 2 more already booked for January, because I plan to do 24 next year. But each one of these, they go through a vetting process. I make sure that they are a service-connected disabled veteran, which there are many ways of verifying that. And then I find out their actual needs, like through friends, through family, through Twitch viewers, you name it. I go through and I actually assess their situation. One of the people that's on my list, he himself gives back to his fellow veterans. He has started a ride service down in Missouri in the backwoods to where he lives in a really rural area, but there are lots of other veterans that can't get to the VA. So he takes his own vehicle personally and he goes and gets them to their appointments just out of goodness of his heart. Well, this guy is 100% disabled and he barely makes a dime because he's paying it out on everything else that he's got going on.
He's
and
in it
he's
for the
still
money.
Yeah, he's not in it for the money. He's in it to help others.
Mhm.
That to me is somebody that could really use a creative outlet for themselves, you know? And each one of these people, they have found a way through somebody else bringing them to my attention. And I have gone and I have lurked in their streams. I have lurked in their YouTube video comment sections, you name it. And I make sure that they are who they appear to be.
So okay. So it's not, you're not just building PCs for everybody. There is research involved. There is homework involved. You again, you do your homework, and you find out through your sources, verifiable sources. Was this person a service member? Is this person a veteran? Are they disabled? And then going forward, then like you said, you lurk on their streams and see maybe their character, who they are, and you hear anecdotes or stories from these friends who reach out to you, and then this is how you decide, I'm gonna build a PC. Now, two more questions in terms of logistics. You build the PC. Do you just ship? How do you ship it? And then in terms of and then just real quick, I know that you said that it's for disabled veterans. Some veterans, ugly stuff happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you decide in terms of mouse and keyboard or accessibility? That's a better word. Like, how do you building to basically.
Yeah.
Sorry, before I go off on a rant.
Well, it makes perfect sense because each individual build that I do, I get in touch with a person after I surprise them and say, hey, look, I want to do something for you. I can't tell you exactly what, but I want to do something special for you. And I plan on building this because my name has gotten out in the community now that people know that that's what I do. I build custom computers for disabled veterans. So they do understand that portion. But I go and I ask them their goals, their ambitions, the things that they would use this computer for, everything that they need, their limitations, what type of issues hinder them from doing certain things. Like our current recipient that I'm building for, I actually, long story, I'll go on it later, but our current build has to be rebuilt because we had a case flaw that happened as I got the power supply in, the final part. But anyways, our current recipient, he's a disabled veteran and he suffers from severe back issues. He has inflamed discs, which causes nerve issues. He can't be up and about for too long a period of time. So he actually has a bed in the bedroom, but he's also got a bed in his living room. He has to be able to lay down. Well, I was able to get him a brand new custom desk and a brand new reclinable Arosi chair, because Arosi sponsors us.
That's awesome, dude. That is amazing.
Super awesome.
I got him a chair, but I also got him wireless peripherals. So if he ever does have to lay down while he's streaming, he can do so, and he doesn't have to worry about his peripherals being tied to the computer.
That's legit.
So yeah, I do find out their needs as far as how they are able to function. And certain individuals, they don't need a lot of that. We have one individual that he suffers from seizures. And so I had to make sure that what I'm doing couldn't cause, possible photo light sensitivities. So I have to stick to a single color in the build. So he's not getting a lot of the flashing, rolling RGB, unicorn puke that you see in some of these systems.
Unicorn puke. I love that.
That's the name of this episode. There it is.
Oh, yep. Done. Yep. Settled.
Oh man.
And it touches my heart because so many of these guys they refuse over and over and over again, because the minute that I tell them, they say, no, I don't deserve this, I don't need this, I have what I need, why are you doing this for me? And I say the same thing every single time. It's not a matter of deserving, because you do deserve it. It's the fact that this is a gift, and you're not supposed to turn away a gift, because a gift can possibly change your outlook on life.
Yep.
Yep.
I'm glad that you mentioned that, because a lot of these guys come back. I work in higher ed, and I'm lucky enough that in my department over at admissions, we have the director of the veterans department. And we see a lot of these guys come in and, they need help. They need guidance in a sense. They come back, and I've seen so many, it's just so tough for a lot of them. But in what you're doing to help them get through whatever it is that they need to get through, and it's selfless. Again, you're not doing it for the money. I'm pretty sure that you're making nothing out of this. And if anything, I'm pretty sure stuff's coming out of your pocket. But again,
extremely.
Exactly. But you're not doing it for the money. You're thinking about. Am I correct in saying that you're thinking about starting this as a charity full time?
Yes.
Have you started that process in terms of all the legal hurdles and all the designations and titles that you'll need?
It is rough. I am in the final hurdles for getting what they call a 501c status.
Yes, this is what I was referring to.
And that is the charity organization status with the IRS, so I can accept donations from corporations as well as individuals. And it is a fairly expensive process, because I am on a fixed income myself, being a disabled vet with 4 kids and a wife. So when they say it's going to cost me, $275 just to file the first portion, and then $600 to file the second portion, that's money out of pocket that I don't exactly have. So I've been doing, GoFundMe's to pay for parts in the builds. I've been paying out of pocket every month to try and source out certain parts that don't get donated. And then shipping is my biggest concern, because our first 2 builds I shipped completely out of pocket. The next 4 were local, and so I didn't have to pay for shipping. But the first 2 builds cost me $150 each ground shipping.
Wow. That is an expense.
Yeah, it gets a bit rough. So I've been trying to crowdsource as much as possible to raise awareness, so I can actually, cover these, the shipping costs and the individual parts that we don't get donated, because right now we have 0 for motherboards. Motherboards and graphics cards are the hardest things to source from companies.
Now, I'm going to get into the nitty gritty in terms of, I don't want to, the word capability is not the right word, in terms of power. But when you're building the PC, obviously, we don't expect you to build a high-end PC all the time. So is it just based on the parts that you have at the time? Do you find out what type of games they play? Are they graphically extensive? Are they first-person shooters? I know this is, we're going more into the gaming aspect of it, but how do you decide, hey, what build am I going to do besides, independent of the accessibility aspect of it? But in terms of power, how do you decide, what you're going to build for what veteran?
Okay. Well, to put it that way, the lowest end build that I have done had an i5 7500 in it for the CPU. That was a quality quad core processor.
Is that like a mid tier, like a high to upper mid tier CPU?
Yeah. Well, a 7500 is 2 steps down from the 7700, which is essentially 3 generations old now. as far as the CPUs are concerned. So I mean, it would be like putting a Ryzen 1600 in their rig. I mean, it's not an old processor. It still performs. It still has the capabilities for gaming, everything like that. And by putting a mid to high tier graphics card with it, it's not going to bottleneck by the processor.
Okay.
So every build that I have done, I have made sure it's the highest quality I can get for each individual. And I do find out their games that they play. I do find out their use case for it. So if they're going to be doing more than just gaming and they have some video rendering that they have to do, I make sure to have extra RAM in there. I make sure that the OSs are all on solid state drives rather than hard drives, so they can run things faster for certain aspects of their performance levels. Like one veteran's getting an 8-core processor with 32 gigs because they do video editing and things of that nature, while the next person will get a 6 or 4-core processor with 16 gigs and an 8 gig graphics card because all they do is just your standard gaming sessions at 1080p. I do have a minimum specification for these systems, and that is no lower than a quad core, no lower than 3 to 4 years old for part release, and no lower than 16 gigs for the RAM, no lower than 8 gigabytes for the graphics cards.
Yeah, that's
Okay. So again, you do have a minimum spec that you stick to.
Yes, and I do make ultra high quality. Like, prime example, our last build, while it was an air cooled build, it had a 2700X. It had 32 gigs of RAM. It had an 8 gig RX 580 Red Devil card in it. It had a full theme. I built it to look like the guy's Power Wagon, his Dodge Power Wagon 2019.
Wow.
Like, I built it to look like that, and it was in a $150 case.
That's
I mean,
insane.
it wasn't in anything low end. I make sure that these guys are getting something special that they can cherish, that they can look at and make sure that, like, this is mine. Nobody else is going to have this. This is unique. I'm not pumping them out like a factory does. And I make sure that I hand run all of the cables. I make sure that all of their cable management in the back is neat and tidy, so it looks like it was professionally done. It's something that I take to heart.
You take pride in, you definitely take pride in the builds that in the PCs that you build.
Yes.
Marlon, you wanted to say something? I cut you off, brother. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, I honestly, first of all, I need to say this. Thank you for your service. I have a soft spot for veterans. I have a spot for military people, given the fact that my grandpa was in the military in Honduras, and I was, for a couple of reasons, I couldn't go to the military. So anyone who has been through that, they have my full respects. They have my full support. The fact that you're doing this for the veterans, the fact that you are doing this out of your own pocket, and the fact that you are customizing them in a way that speaks to them, in a way that it is truly theirs, and that it's not just something that they are going to Best Buy and buy, but this is something that they can enjoy. And if they want to upgrade it, it is a PC, so they themselves can upgrade it later on when they have the time. That for me is, brother, you if you need anything from AEG, if you need anything from us to, like, just spread out the word, if you need just tell you, like, then just bring it in. We can help you out. No problem with that.
Absolutely. You're doing a great job.
You're doing God's work, brother. I'll tell you.
I appreciate that. I really do. And my wife keeps telling me, and she yells at me quite often for it, but she says, honey, you got to start taking the credit where credit is due. But it's that military mindset that, I'm doing. I don't need credit for what I'm doing. I just want to do it. I want to do it because I want to help, period. And, like some of these guys, and females especially, we don't discriminate as far as anything is concerned in any realm, we try and make sure to be all inclusive. But each one of them holds a place in my heart because I've gotten to know them. I've gotten to know their stories. I've gotten to know them as a person, and I've heard their heartache and I felt it, and I've been with them through some of it. Like some of these guys I actually served with at some point in my career. And we've lost touch over the past, decade and a half, but we're still brothers and sisters in arms, and we should still take care of each other because the government sure isn't going to.
Absolutely.
Don't even get me started on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I asked you about the accessibility question, I also wanted to bring up the point that you yourself, as a disabled war veteran, would know more than anybody in terms of what they need, in terms of accessibility. So you can use your own personal life experience and say, hey, well, I know what this is. I've lived through this, so I can make a PC build that, and I'm so happy that you mentioned that it's not coming out of the factory line.
Yes.
And this is kind of nerdy, and maybe you'll see I am weird. You'll see how weird I am. But when you build these PCs, because I'm a little bit of a hoarder, I like to collect things.
Yeah.
What?
When you build these PCs, do you have because if I were you building these PCs, I'd take pictures of them before I ship them out. I'd have like a little album. I'd have the specs in terms of, well, this one had this, so this one that had that. This one's called Marcia. This one's called Larry. Just weird stuff like that. Do you have those little those little
I do. Now, see, you're getting into part of what my wife does for the entire charity portion. Now, we do go through a process to where my bride, she takes photos of every part that goes into every build, and she makes them marketing worthy for each company. So we do send back to the company photos exclusive for them. So if they want to use them for promos or, social media or what have you, they can. And then we take photos for ourselves that are different so that we can actually market that build after the fact. So then we use them for social media. We use them to promote our cause and everything like that. And we go through, and I do label each one of them, but I label them in my head as a theme. So we had the NPDB 6 build. That was our very first build. That was our unit number, and I actually had unit insignias placed on the side.
Same.
That's awesome.
Then we had the Fortnite build. Well, then we had the black and red truck build because it was literally made to look like his pickup truck.
That's awesome, dude.
We keep going on all of these themes. Like I have one coming up that is a sci-fi theme that I can't actually specify what sci-fi theme it is because he's watching. We have an RGB, unicorn puke build that's coming up. We have my wife's build that I did for her. We called it the Pushinicorn build because I custom etched Pushinicorn into the glass for her computer.
That's amazing.
My personal build is called Colossus because I made it to look like Colossus from Marvel. I mean,
that's insane.
That's awesome.
Name it. That's the theme that I base off, and I go for each one of these. I've got one that's designed to look like a devil dog. I've got one that's going to be covered in lightning. You name it.
Wow.
That's legit.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Marlon already said it, but I wanted to have a chance to say it. Thank you for your service, man. This is amazing. Again, I'm not a PC guy. But just hearing you get excited is getting me excited about it. It's just amazing to hear, all these things that you're doing for these disabled veterans. It's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. I really do. And, as a service member, I'm going to say this to all of the non-service members that are out there today. As a veteran, hearing thank you for your service is one of the hardest things to respond to that you'll ever get told.
Yep.
And it's because there are so many different outlooks on a person's service. Because they're like, for one person, their service might have really, really hurt them in some way. And in another person like myself, I was injured while in service, and I got out, and I had to fight just to get heard. So thank you for your service. We're always going to say thank you, or nod, or shake your hand, or say something, because it's out of respect, because you showed us a sign of respect, and we really genuinely appreciate it. We just don't always know how to respond or how to feel about it.
Yeah,
I get that.
This is something that I've heard, and I hate using the, I'm not going to mention his name. He doesn't listen to the show anyway, but he always says, the veteran population. At work, when I always hear that, I'm like, that just sounds so disattached, the veteran population. These are people. These are our brothers and sisters,
Exactly.
right? But you are not the first veteran that I have heard say that very same thing that you just said. Hey, I don't know how to respond to that. I feel a little awkward when people tell me that. I do say thank you because it's what I'm supposed to say, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I felt like a little bit of an oddball, because I was the one who I didn't say thank you for your service because of my experiences at work, right?
Well, and it's never a requirement. Just know that for a fact. It's yes, it's a sign of respect for somebody, and we do appreciate it, but it's never a requirement.
It's the thing for me. The reason why I say that most of the time is because, for me, the military has always been a volunteer job. For me, has always been somebody who decided, what, I want to do this because I want to serve my country. And for me, that's for somebody who wanted to do it but could not do it. That is, like, for me, the best way that I can tell them, hey, listen, I understand that for some people their services may have been much more traumatic and they would have had issues with that. But the best way that I can tell you is, like, thank you for volunteering, and thank you for putting yourself out there and giving me the freedom that I now enjoy. And,
Absolutely.
And that's the best way that I can
This is
tell.
true.
Because
Definitely.
well, because a lot of people just say, like, oh, the government does this, the military people are just, people who just like going to war games. And, like, listen, the reason why they did this and the reason why you're able to say all that crap is because they themselves gave their own freedom and their own liabilities on the front line for you to say that. And for me, I have the high respect for veterans and for soldiers, because after all, they took the job that most people don't want to do. And they do the job that most people say, you know what, I don't feel like doing. And they do it with a pride and passion that you will never see in a lot of people in the corporate world. So for me, like I said, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. And my motivations for getting in, and this is something that has been asked of me a few times. So, why did you join? Why did you want to go into the service? Well, when I was in high school, I knew right out of the gate that my family couldn't afford to put me to college. I would never be able to go to college without joining the military. And so I didn't even take the, ACTs or the SATs or anything like that. I immediately went for the ASVAB, because I knew if I took my ASVAB and I got into the service, that I would be able to go and see the world and then come back and go to college. And like, for me, I quite literally did see the world, because when I was stationed in Japan, I made it all the way as far south as Australia. Wow. I have been to Australia. I was stationed in Japan. I got to go to Okinawa. I got to do a humanitarian in Iwo Jima. I got to literally walk up the mountain that those men fought so hard to get up with these surviving members. Wow. I got to walk up there and experience that. I got to go up and get my jar of black sand. I mean, you name it. I got to experience so much, and then I got to come home and go to college for free. Do I use my degree now? No, I can't. I was kind of an idiot with my degree, and I became a massage therapist. But I mean, my wife appreciates it every now and then. So.
Look, take it from me, who's somebody who's a personal trainer. Listen,
Mhm.
massage therapy is a godsend. After
Yes,
a
it
heartbreak.
is.
It is. I don't care what anyone tells me. Listen, after going to the gym for 4 hours, that massage feels like a god just came and says, "Listen, we understand your muscles are sore. We will help you out." And I am so glad that you said you're a massage therapist because, man, if I ever
And like I wish I could still do it. I really do, but my body was so already broken by that point. By the time I finished my degree, I couldn't maintain it. I ended up stopping altogether and going and working odd jobs just because I couldn't afford to actually be one. So I mean, yeah, I do still practice. I do still have that knowledge, but my degree became useless, and so I kind of got left without a sense of purpose. And you'll find that with a lot of service members when they get out, they go, "Well, where is my lane supposed to be now? What's supposed to be driving me at this point? I have nobody telling me what to do anymore.
Yes.
I don't have anybody else that has any clue what they're doing. So what am I to do now?" And so I kind of felt that way myself. I went through a lot of dark roads. I was an alcoholic, severe. I got to a case a day to myself at one point. So it got really bad, and it took me being told that I was going to have a son before I sobered up. Well, then the issues with my PTSD started really coming to the forefront. And I started having severe anger issues and severe night terrors, and you name it, and things like that. It caused me to become more aware of my mental health, because I was scaring myself because I thought I was going to be a danger to my own family.
Yeah.
And that is when I got my wake up call. Well, I started seeking out more mental health, and it wasn't until I met my current wife and started doing this that I got the most relief that I have ever had, because the satisfaction from doing this is better for my mental health than any other therapist or psychologist or you name it that I've ever had.
And it makes sense because you found your
Yeah.
way, because that's literally what you did. You realized that you went through some dark turns in your life, and you realized, you know what, I need to better myself. And when you found that outlet to just be able to give back to the community, that you yourself know what they're going through, and you yourself know the type of things that they have to deal with on a daily basis, that you can help them out. And honestly, like, you're from what I'm hearing, you are probably the best guy to do this job, because you've been there, you've done some stuff, and you're able to help those veterans who may need something that will spark interest back into their lives, that will spark that drive to move forward. And it's those little things that mean a lot more to people. So,
And it's, I think, again, thank you for sharing. I know, folks who have issues, they have their problems, and they're just so wary of talking about it. They get defensive. Some of them are in denial, and it's a great thing that you can talk about it and you can own it. You can say, hey, I went through this, and, this is my story. This is what happened to me. But I rose above it. And I've become a better person. And, it took this, I had to get to this low point in order, I had to hit rock bottom, to dig right through. But it's a great thing that not only were you able to do that, but you were also able to reverse it, because now look at what you're doing. You're paying it forward. Not only are you paying it forward, but it also brings joy to your life. It brings happiness to your life. You said it yourself. This what you do now in custom charity building of PCs. It's better than what any therapist could provide or give to you. And that's a beautiful story. It's a great story, and we're really appreciative of you telling it here on the AEG show.
Yes,
Oh, thank you
absolutely.
guys.
Well, we're gonna wrap up soon. But
Okay.
before we wrap up, we got to talk a little gaming. What brought you into gaming? Were you a PC gamer your whole life? I'll be honest. When Marlon was talking about Game Boys a little bit, and when we were on the topic of console manufacturers churning out new consoles, I heard a little bit of a cynical laugh, and I'm like, this guy is a PC master race. Am I wrong or am I wrong?
Yes and no. My very first experience gaming was actually my older brother and I. I remember going down to a pawn shop and picking up an NES and a Super Nintendo at the same time, and we brought them home and we started playing, Super Mario and Legend of Zelda. And Legend of Zelda on the original NES hooked me. That gold cartridge original. Link to the Past, the gold cartridge was the best. And you know what? That hooked me. Well, then when PCs, because when I went to school, we still had green screens and we were playing Oregon Trail and Math Munchers, So, I mean, I'm not super old, but I'm old enough that I can still remember, when a floppy disk was actually floppy.
Wow.
But when PC gaming came into my life, it was the early 90s, and they were coming out with games like King's Quest and Leisure Suit Larry, and I mean there were a lot of games out there that they really struck me and they got me hooked, and I kept going. Well, then at 13, I got in trouble for taking my mom's computer apart because I was curious to see its inner workings. Well, I didn't quite put it back together. I just took it apart. And back then, I mean, they were still, $400, $500, $600. Well, today that would have been, a $1,500 equivalent. And so my mom was pissed. Well,
I bet she was, brother.
Oh yeah, I got into a lot of trouble, but
yeah, you were probably grounded for a while.
Yeah, gaming. I remember sessions in junior high with Code Red and giant bags of Doritos and guys playing Super Smash Brothers into the wee hours of the morning because we were all hopped up on Mountain Dew. and then after we finished playing that, we'd get on and watch Dragon Ball Z until 4 a.m.
Goddamn right.
And that was the thing, because I'm a giant nerd. Like, if you were to look at me, you would immediately see Star Wars tattoos. You would see I'm wearing a Star Wars Darth Vader basketball jersey as we speak. Like, dude, I eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff. I've got Deadpool all over my house. I mean, you name it. My kids are nerds, and when it comes to video games, I can't get enough. I never will. I hear you. I think we all hear you over here on AEG Show. We all hear you on that. We wish that Dalton was. We wish he would have stayed on, because his favorite game of all time is the Legend of Zelda. Mm-hmm.
See, he loves it. It's Breath of the Wild specifically. He loves it so much.
My favorite game growing up was Final Fantasy X, but he hates it. He thinks it's like the worst game in the world. He's like, oh, this sucks.
Yeah, Final Fantasy X is honestly a piece of shit.
No, it's not. It's good. It's good.
Oh, come on now. Now, see, if you want to talk the worst out of the Final Fantasy series, you look at 10-2.
Yeah, 10. I mean,
10-2,
I don't know.
10-2 was essentially playing dress up for 6 hours.
I mean, honestly,
Magical
though, 10,
schoolgirl.
10 Titus is a little bitch. I'm gonna go out on a limb.
Oh
and
my god.
Oh, his laugh.
Lord.
His laugh.
His
in
laugh.
That game.
Ha ha ha. Okay. Yeah, Dalton's gonna kill us all. I'll tell you that. He's gonna kill
Travis,
us all.
is there anything right now that you're playing, or any games that are coming out in the near or far future that you're looking forward to?
Okay, coming out, I have been waiting for THQ Nordic to throw out Biomutant. I have been waiting because Biomutant and THQ Nordic, like anything that they throw out there, it's quality.
Is that Avalanche? I think that's Avalanche. I think that's Avalanche Studios,
it's
right?
also Avalanche, yeah.
If you look up Biomutant right now,
it's awesome.
It's just gorgeous, and it's like action adventure meets ninjas meets RPG. Like,
oh, that's the one with that little furry creature that you can.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah. That is Avalanche.
Yes.
Yes. I've seen it. It does look cool.
They kind of got dark on it, honestly. You haven't.
They have done. Yeah, we have heard about it for a while. Yeah, I think they're working on it because I think some of the previews that I read, they said that the game was fun, but it looked rough. It wasn't running well. But again, it's it hasn't released yet, so they're probably in beta.
From what I was understanding, they pulled it back because they were having problems with the cross-platform play. And they had to figure out how to make that accessible if they were going to ever do an online feature for it. Now, because, nowadays, that is a make or break for a game.
Oh, yeah, for online. Mm-hmm. But now, this question goes a little back to what I had asked before regarding, how can these new AMD parts, spur the next generation. Mm-hmm. I think of I'm pretty sure you are a fan of Digital Foundry. I'm a huge fan of Digital Foundry. Mm-hmm. And one of my favorite games that they covered early on at the beginning of the generation, PS4, Xbox One, was Assassin's Creed Unity. Yep. And this game was developed under the assumption that the CPUs in these, current generation consoles now were going to be much stronger and not the weak pieces of shit mobile CPUs that they turned out to be.
Yes.
And Assassin's Creed Unity was an example of that. Mm-hmm. Now, would you agree in the assessment that because all this cross-platform x86, architecture sharing lineage between PC and console, would you agree that as beautiful as the games looked on PC, that because folks, developers focused on console, not so much as the lead platform, but, in terms of getting their games out there and selling the most, would you agree in the assessment that console games were holding back PC games? And do you think that's going to change going forward next generation?
Console games that are ported to PC tend to get held back. However, console games that are released simultaneously with their PC equivalent are not, because they actually go in and lock certain rates inside the game in the programming so that they don't have those issues when they bring it to PC, because it was already designed with PC in mind.
Gotcha.
And like one of the prime examples to that would be like what is it, the Crash trilogy that they released for PC about month and a half, 2 months after the PS4 release. Mm-hmm. You can see the holding back on the PC versus the PlayStation aspect, because PlayStation aspect, when you're playing, it is extremely smooth. But if you're playing at 30 to 60 FPS on 120 or 165 hertz screen, and you're playing with a 1080 Ti or higher, and it's designed to push out, 300 FPS for the quality of graphics that you got in that game, it feels limited. It really does. It feels like you're playing a PS3 game almost.
It feels very clunky because it's just it's not optimized for it.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the issues that I feel like
they're getting ready to address it, though. Mm-hmm. They really are. This is the key. This is where Microsoft made their big push. That's why Xbox Game Pass is now available in beta for PC as we speak. They are pushing cross-platform for everything so that game developers will have everything on every possible port.
I've been beating this drum for months on this show.
You're damn right you have.
For months, I've been beating this
say
very same drum. Yes, I like to pat my back. I do like to pat my back on this one. I won't lie.
Yeah.
Travis, what are your thoughts on these new cloud services in Google Stadia and whatever Microsoft cooks up with their Project X Cloud initiative? Do you see this being a competitor to the PC scene? To the PC scene, or do you see it just being something additive, something that lives alongside PC?
I would say additive, to say the least, because so much of the PC realm is pushing streaming in a different aspect. We are pushing as PC gamers, they're pushing for streaming two different services. So if your upload speed is going to get affected, or if your download speed is going to get affected for your video streams to, say, Twitch, because you're streaming a game the other direction at the same time, people are not going to want to do it. They're going to want to have to separate the two entirely.
So it sounds like a technical issue.
Yes, it really does, because I mean, okay, say you have somebody with 50 meg for their download speed. Their upload speed is going to be anywhere between 10 to 40. So if you're downloading a 4K game as a streaming service, and then you're trying to stream to Twitch, you're not even going to hit 720. You're not even going to hit that 720.
Nope. You're going to be like, well, this game is running a 560, maybe 420, hopefully not 360p. That would suck.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll affect players' ability to do the things that they're already doing now just on a PC by itself. Or a console. Obviously. Yeah, or a console by itself. Like a 1080 Ti right now, you can run all of your games. A 1080 Ti, this is 2 generations ago, can run all of your games on the PC at 1440 plus stream them and never dip below 90 FPS ever.
At full settings.
At full settings. That's ultra everything.
Now, again, this is a question coming from a very ignorant non-PC person. Mm-hmm. How is the scene doing in terms of using multiple graphics cards? I know that was a thing a couple years back, more than probably 8 years ago.
We are done, actually. Believe it or not, the only platform that still offers it, Navi, is capable of doing Crossfire. However,
that's what it's called. Yes.
However, NVIDIA no longer does SLI for any benefit to your gaming, because the graphics cards that are coming out nowadays don't need it, and the games are no longer optimized for it, because you're not working with a 2 gigabyte graphics card doubled to run a 4 gigabyte necessary game. We're at a point to where these games are running well below the graphics card limit. So a 1080 Ti with 11 gigs of VRAM is playing a game like, say, Assassin's Creed Odyssey that only uses 6.5 gigs.
Yep.
Okay. So, yeah, I think the key thing you mentioned is just, developers are not optimizing for that. And was it always like a niche thing, or back in the day, was it something that people heavily did, bought double graphics card to boost their power or graphical capability?
It depends. I did it when I first started out because it did help. Back then, they were optimized. It would utilize every bit of VRAM you had in your system, whereas nowadays, you don't need it. You really don't. And it has become a niche market now. So for the super enthusiast who wants to make things symmetrical, or you're doing a beautiful custom loop water-cooled build like the one in my system, where you want to add that awesome looking second graphics card. I don't have two personally, but I mean, prime example. You see a lot of these water-cooled builds with 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 graphics cards just so they can use up all the PCIe slots on a board. I have seen it done. Oh, it really is. It's just it's one of those like, hey, look at what we did.
Yeah, like my e-penis is bigger than yours.
Yeah, that is when you get into the true PC master race. Yeah. Like, I'm better than you type deal. But at the same time, it's kind of cool that you can say, hey, look, I was able to do this. And you can't do that with a console.
As an outsider, I would definitely consider myself an outsider. When I see folks, especially Paul's Hardware on YouTube, build PCs, it always reminded me of. I have a cousin who, when he was younger, he was into like Hondas and Subarus and tuning cars or whatever they're called. Sorry, I'm not a car guy. And it always reminded me of that, like sort of like that, maybe that same sort of culture where the fun isn't just racing the car, the fun isn't just playing the game, but it's building your car up, or in this case, a PC, and then having an overlay, seeing how many frames a second you can hit. That's the thrill.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, prime example, my current build, when I had originally built it. It was designed with just an all-in-one liquid cooler. It was nothing special. It was nothing fancy. It was something that I could put together, and I knew it was going to run efficiently at all times. Well, I wanted to boost that performance level. I wanted to make it more efficient. I wanted to take it like a car engine and make it run at peak efficiency. So I tuned it, and that's what overclocking does. That's what going into your BIOS and tweaking certain things about it does. Well, then I wanted to take it a step further after that, and I went and I built a custom liquid cooling loop for it. I hand built it. Like
what?
I have a custom liquid cooling loop in my system.
My God!
Wow.
Amazing.
Did you like use a 3D
build a
printer or
BIOS?
something?
Oh, no. Like this, I'm getting ready to redo it as we speak as a sponsored gig, because I'm getting ready to rebuild my video editing machine. But
okay.
the processor that's going in it, an all-in-one liquid cooler, is not going to be able to maintain the proper temperatures that I need it to. And so I take, like, currently it's soft tubing. So it's all essentially rubberized tube.
Gotcha.
And, clamp fittings and you name it. But I am changing that out, and I am testing my own capabilities as a former mechanical engineer for the Navy.
You're gonna go for the glass tubing?
I'm not going glass. I am going chrome-plated
Oh
brass
my!
tubing.
Are you kidding? Good luck with that. That's gonna be an insane bill. You do. Oh wow!
To the listeners watching on stream, me and Jeff apologize profusely. I think we were supposed to be like, "Oh wow, that's amazing!" there, but that just went right above our
I
heads.
was good. Yeah, like
Like I
He's
said,
building a
ignorance.
really
Ignorance.
nice rig. I'll just say that, okay? He's
Well-
building something akin to like something like around. I want to say I want to put a price tag because a lot of these builds tend to go either over the top or just crazy. But
it will be equivalent to if you had built it a year ago, it would be equivalent to going and buying a used car.
yeah,
That is impressive. I see that. I know that is
yes,
impressive.
that's a good touch point. Good touch point.
And though I want to put this out there, I'm not paying for these parts out of pocket. These are sponsored parts.
For sure.
These,
you did mention
yeah,
that. at the
like
beginning, yes.
I don't, I can't afford to barely maintain what I'm doing right now. But I have these companies that have seen my work. They appreciate it enough to where they're like, we want to see more of what you can do. We want to see just how far you can go. So we're going to send you this, and this in X amount of parts. And we want to see what you make of it with your creativity. And so I'm actually getting another creative outlet on top of the veteran builds.
oof.
I
want to see that. I want to see that. Like I really want to see that build because it just looks
If you want to see what it looks like right now, you can actually go to with the soft tubing loops. Go to Shellback Tech. It's Shellback_Tech on Instagram, and you'll be able to see it. It's bright blue, and it's my pride and joy, and it's called Colossus. I even had a veteran friend make Colossus decals for it.
Whoa, dude, that's awesome. It's called Colossus.
Yes, because it is very large. I mean, it's what,
Oh,
20.
oh my God, I'm looking at it right now, dude.
Yeah, that's insane. That's
Oh
yeah.
my God.
We're talking about we're talking high end PCs.
And he's got
okay?
a Colossus a Funko Pop.
Yep. That was what I based the entire build off of when I saw the case. Because when I saw the case, I immediately thought of his chrome plating all over his body, his stainless steel body, or whatever the actual metallic alloy he is. I can't remember off the top of my head.
I can tell you right now, listeners and viewers, Apple's cheese grater ain't got shit on this.
But this is the thing for me. Like, this is one of the things that I have to tell you, Gustavo, because as somebody who's a PC aficionado and just loves building and looking at PC builds, not necessarily does a lot of the stuff nowadays, but before I used to go to a lot of the source parts and stuff like that and go and try to see if I could make something. Never panned out. It always was yeah, nah, this is not for me. But because my issue with PC has always been just getting the iOS to work correctly, because it is such a pain in the butt when you realize, well, iOS is not functioning correctly. You got to look through the entire thing to see what's going on. For me, that troubleshooting has always been issues for me. By building, but just making everything fit together, it's just always been very therapeutic. Taking it out, building it, and put it back together. That's something that you can just spend 5-6 hours and just enjoy it, because it's so therapeutic about it. But I'm looking at some of these builds and I'm going, man, you oh my God, the Prime 338. Oh my God, you got some Asus stuff, fucking motherboards, man.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel, Travis? Question: how do you feel that Intel and Nvidia has always been, specifically Intel, they were stuck with 4 cores for the processors for the longest time, and it only took maybe about 6-7 years ago when they decided to go okay, we're gonna go with 8 cores and 16 cores and all that stuff. For you, what do you feel when Intel was just you know what, we don't need to pay for this. I'm just gonna be we'll stuck with it until 4 cores for the longest time. For me, that was the biggest slap to the face for me.
They did it because it was another nickel and dime situation. They didn't have that competition. You had these, a prime example, AMD at that time, they put out stuff like the Phenom 2 6 cores and stuff like that, but they still weren't competing with the quad core i7s that were out at the time. So they didn't have to worry. Intel was just we're going to rest on our laurels and we're going to be comfortable. We know that all we got to do is make small changes here and there until we are required by competition to add to this lineup. And they had their 6 cores and 8 cores and things like that, but those weren't even for the standard everyday machines. Those were for the enthusiasts and the workstations, and that was it.
And those were 16. I remember my brother.
They were extremely high dollar.
I remember when my brother was trying to get into AutoCAD and just be a architect and stuff like that, and he would ask me, oh man, I want to make a 16 core. I'm you know how much that shit's gonna cost you? It's yeah, but the Intel, what can I do about it? Nowadays, a 16 core will run you half the price of what it used to cost back in the day. And look at the Xenon that just came out this year. It's impressive. A 24 core is going to run you 13K or something like that.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And then then you drop then you see this Threadripper that runs 32 cores and they charge a quarter of the price.
Right.
Or
it's just what just happened? We're screwed.
Right? Or you're waiting for we're all waiting for this hidden announcement, because the 3950X was shown. The 3950X, it's the Ryzen This is consumer level Ryzen 16 core processor that is beating out the 9900K all day, every day for a fraction of the price.
Is that that 9900 8K whatever? Sorry, is that the top of the line?
That's top Intel for consumer grade.
Top of the line. Like
Okay.
Like if you were to look at the prices that Intel has when it comes to their top of the line, just like workstation price, we're not talking 3K, 4K. That's we're talking like $10.
Yep.
Yeah. Your minimum is $8,000 on that, and to be able to, for AMD to be competing with Intel in that range for a fraction of the price, that literally turned the entire industry upside down. Like Intel and Nvidia are like on just
they're trying to play catch up.
Yeah, by this point. And we as consumers, we were begging Intel and Nvidia for be doing this for, I don't know, 6 years ago. And we've been when the whole Intel Bitcoin thing happened, I remember like the prices for graphics card were just shooting up immensely, and I was getting so mad about it because I was trying to build a PC, and I'm going, wait, you're charging me $900 for a graphics card that's like 3 generations old. And I'm going, no, I'm not paying for that. I'm not stupid, okay? I'll just wait.
Right, and it took almost a year and a half for those prices to drop. A year and a half I sat and waited, and you know what? I bought mine, and not even 2 months later, the new generation dropped. I said, "Oh, are you kidding me?" And that what you see in that Colossus build, that was this cost as much as a house payment type. That was my expensive graphics card, and it's already 3 generations old.
Now, to wrap up here with a final question, where, and maybe this is a foolish question considering again I'm an outsider when it comes to PC, but where do you see PC? Actually, let's put a little bit of context for the listeners and the viewers. One of the things that Travis mentioned that this is my argument with Dalton in terms of it's all about cost benefit, right? How much am I going to pay, and what am I going to get, right? And is it going to be the bang for my buck? I think that applies to PC, and I think now it's starting to apply with consoles. I look at the Xbox One X as an example of that. But where do you see PC gaming going in the future? I would say that console will never catch up. But with these new consoles and them talking about native 4K 120 frames per second, SSD for probably $500 to $600, again, although it'll never have the output and power that a PC does, depending on the right price, it may be something where I'm like, wow, this for me personally may be something that I'd rather have under my entertainment center than a PC. But for you, who's on the other side, who I can't speak for you, but I will. You are, staunchly PC. Where do you see it going?
Honestly, I see the PC moving to a point to where we are able to integrate PC completely into the console space, because we are getting to a point where these processors are running so small and they're starting to break them apart. They're using multi-chip setups now on the dies, and by doing so, they are able to fit more into the same space that they would have, say, for the processor that they had on the original Xbox One, in half the space. So they're giving better cooling capacity. They're giving better everything. So honestly, in the next 10 years, I see it morphing into a point to where the consoles and the PCs will be interchangeable. However, it's the add-ons you put to them that will change up the game.
Wow. So you see like a sort of like a modular a modular type deal, a modular type feature where you can add things like, for example, back in the N64 days, the Rumble pack or that memory pack or something like that?
Essentially, yes. I mean, we have right now, they just released, and it's available for purchase, 32 gig individual stick RAM.
Wow.
32 individual stick. You put 4 of those into a standard DIMM slots.
128 gigs of RAM.
That's 128 gigs in an everyday system.
DDR6 all day, every day.
Right, and then you look at like the workstation class or the enthusiast class where you have 8 slots of that available. What did you just say? 256 gigs of RAM on a single workstation? Okay, then I'll take it.
Chris, is it Chris Roberts? Chris Roberts, delay Star Citizen for another 10 years. Go ahead.
Don't even get me started on Star Citizen. That thing is like, oh Lord.
Now it's time to wrap up. And first of all, from all of us at AEG, Travis, I want to say thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to have you on our show so you could share your story. Thank you for what you're doing in the PC community and for your selfless work and dedication and your turnaround. I'm grateful. I'm thankful. Thank you so much. But before we log off, I just want you to plug everything. Plug all the holes. Plug everything. Where can we find you, Travis?
Well, every social media outlet that you could ever imagine, you can find me as Shellback_Tech. No joke, I am on LinkedIn as my first name, but you'll find it as Shellback_Tech. You'll find me on Twitter. You'll find me on Instagram. You'll find me on Facebook. You'll find me. I have my own personal website that's linked on all of it. I mean, you name it, you will be able to find me at Shellback_Tech. And I am apparently getting rated like crazy this evening. So like, and they all just came in right at the end of the show.
Oh, no.
Like, I appreciate all of the things that you guys are doing for me, and I appreciate you having me on here. This is amazing, and you know, it's not every day that I get to enjoy talking about tech and talking about my story and everything like that. One last plug, if you don't mind, I do have an event going on my Twitch channel, because that's another thing that I do on a regular basis with my wife, on Twitch on August 3rd from noon Central Standard Time until 10 p.m. Central Standard Time. I am doing a fundraiser birthday charity stream to raise funds for #Disabled Veteran Build. And we will be having guest appearances. We will be having giveaways. We will be having, you name it, every hour on the hour for 45 minutes of that hour, until we raise our goal, because our ultimate goal is to raise at least $1,000 that day.
We're going to plug it. Every 15 minutes on AEG. We're going to plug it. We're going to plug it on Freelancer Radio. We're going to plug it from here to everywhere. We're going to do it everywhere. Thank you so much, Travis. Thank you so much for dealing with us. It's we steal this line from Kind of Funny, but it's a dumpster car on fire.
Right on, fellas. I appreciate you having me, and you know, I would be more than happy to make this a regular thing if you guys would have me, because, you know, talking tech, talking video games, that's my jam. That's what I do. And I do it every day.
I'm going to say it right here, listeners. I've been talking to this guy for close to 2 hours. And I'm like, there's so many other questions that I have. I want to get in. There's so many other things that I want to talk about in terms of in terms of gaming, in terms of exclusives, in terms of PC, in terms of things that I have no idea. But thank you so much, Travis. And with that, listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to the AEG show. This is going to go live tomorrow. It's going to go live tomorrow. It's going to be a great show. It's going to be a great one. I can tell you right now. After you've heard it, you'll hear the ending, and you're going to be like, you know what? That Goose guy was right. This was a great show. We liked it. We liked it. And we'll catch you next week. Thank you so much.